And joining us once again are Gideon Rose, Managing Editor of Foreign Affairs magazine, and Rana Foroohar, Senior Editor of Newsweeks International Editions. Welcome to both of you. Nice to see you.
Thank you.
So, well, let's start with Afghanistan, and it seems that everything is really kind of up in the air. Gideon, your thoughts on what do you make of this debate?
Well, it's fascinating because a debate over troop levels, how much force the United States should send, is segueing into a debate on strategy. What strategy should the United States use? Which is segueing in turn into a debate over, is the war necessary in the first place? And it's fascinating because everything seems to be up in the air, and so you pull one thread and the whole sweater unravels. And no one knows which way this is going to go. I think at the end of the day, it's going to look a lot like where it was a few months ago, then it's going to be dramatically different, simply because the costs of either going big or going out are both too high politically for the administration to bear. So I think you'll muddle through, but that may or may not be the most optimal substantive strategy.
Rana, do you think in some ways that it's almost become radioactive?
I absolutely agree with that. I think that you've got a situation that's almost unwinnable for the U.S. Any successful counterinsurgency needs at least one legitimate partner, and that's the problem. We don't have that in Afghanistan right now. Karzai has lost legitimacy because of the vote rigging issues, both within its own population, but also in the world at large. You see the EU coming out and saying that they think about half of the votes for Karzai were fraudulent. So this is a big mess, and I think the Taliban is going to continue to get stronger. Things are going to get more chaotic, and you may have a situation in which the U.S. has to think about, what are we doing here? Are we going to have to negotiate with the Taliban at some stage?
And these are all questions that are being asked. Is this conflict winnable without sending more troops?
Well, the conflict, frankly, probably isn't winnable in a simple sense, no matter what we do. Because the real end game in terms of winning is a stable Afghanistan that can survive on its own and not be a threat even when foreign troops aren't there. That's not going to happen anytime soon. So the real question is, how much cost and how much risk are you prepared to bear for what sort of halfway outcome? And so we're going to be with this debate for a long time. And frankly, everybody's arguments against their opponents are better than their arguments in favor of their own strategy, which is amusing to watch, but makes it very hard to come to a fixed endpoint for the debate. So it keeps cycling around.
Right. But are we seeing a rift opening up here between President Obama and his top military commanders about whether or not to send more troops? They seem to be suggesting, yes, that is exactly what we need to do. But the president is saying that he doesn't want to put the horse before the cart.
I think that you're seeing just a greater politicization of the situation. You've got a military general saying that we need to have more troops and we're going to lose the war within a year if we don't expand forces on the ground. Then you've got Biden and other civilian leaders saying exactly the opposite, that we need to refocus, to scale back and to target al-Qaeda instead of the Taliban. Clearly there's chaos on the strategy front, and I would agree with Gideon that everyone is better at criticizing the opposition than actually coming up with real solutions.
Right, but Gideon, do you see a rift opening up between the president and his top commanders?
The military is very uncomfortable with halfway policies. They want to either be really big and do the job properly as they would see it, or not be tasked with it at all. So they're a little frustrated with the political leadership for giving them yet another kind of half-assed, middle-of-the-road policy that doesn't actually get anywhere. But realistically, the Obama administration has severe political costs and problems in either going big or getting out. So I think the answer is there is something of a rift that's developing, but neither side is going to get everything it wants, and you're going to continue somewhere more along the lines of current policy in a way that nobody really is happy with, but is better than the alternatives.
Okay, well, let's move on to the G-20 summit in Pittsburgh. This used to be a club of 8, some would say a very exclusive elitist club of 8, and it's now broadening out to a club of 20. Your thoughts on, what this summit was able to accomplish, but also what does this shift signal for the United States and for what kind of world we seem to be kind of moving towards?
Well, I think, as you point out, the very fact that the G20 has become the place to work out the world's problems is very important, and it's good news because it's a more inclusive and diverse group of nations. In terms of what was agreed upon, I think it's great that there was some agreement upon bankers' pay and how to sort of regulate that going forward, capital requirements. I think bankers' pay is where you're going to see the most agreement, actually, because that's the thing that the average person on the street, both in the U.S. and Europe, can understand. I think the issue of global imbalances is still problematic. It's great great that China and the other large emerging nations are getting a bigger seat at the table at this event to discuss that, because that's still the key issue that's unresolved.
Gideon, what do you think about the fact that it's now a group of 20 nations as opposed to 8 nations?
Well,
what does that mean for the United States?
I think this is a very good thing. What this really is institutional recognition of what our mutual friend Fareed Zakaria has called the post-American world. That it's not just the United States alone, it's not even NATO, it's not even sort of a small group of big countries. That you need to bring a larger group of players to the table in order to have any kind of real buy-in among the essential players for global economic policy. And unlike, let's say, the political issues of the Security Council, economic issues are too important not to deal with, and so the institutional reform has happened. Everyone's been talking about it in the Security Council, hasn't happened there. Here, it did happen. And it's going to make things unwieldy because it's much more difficult to come to a consensus among 20, especially with widely divergent interests, than it is even among a much smaller group, which was always hard there too. But it's necessary, it's appropriate, and the United States is going to have less leverage, but not because they've moved the sphere to a larger group, but rather because its role in the world is not as large as it once was.
All right, I'm afraid we're out of time for now, but thank you very much to both of you for joining us on the roundtable discussion.
Thank you.